Imagine for a moment that the ground beneath your feet is not just ground. It is not random earth, not generic floorboards, not a circumstance to be endured or escaped. It is holy ground, not because it looks holy or feels holy, but because consciousness stands upon it. Because you are here. Because God is not something distant you must summon, but something always present, waiting to be noticed. As Emmet Fox once taught, there is no moment where God is absent, only moments where we forget to recognize the divine. You have been taught, perhaps without words, that the sacred belongs elsewhere, that it's reserved for sanctuaries, for retreats, for quiet rooms with candles and chants. You have internalized the idea that awakening comes later, that peace belongs to the lucky or the enlightened or the far away. But this idea is false, and this falseness costs you. The very moment you are in now, whether it feels glorious or gritty, is not in the way of your growth. It is the material of it. You do not need to become someone else or travel somewhere different to begin. Right where you stand is enough. Not eventually. Now. There is nothing romantic about struggle. And yet, if you've walked through any real transformation, you know this. It didn't begin when life was easy. It began when something broke open, when the plan failed, when comfort vanished. That space, the one that most people try to escape, is sacred ground, because it is the place where ego thins and soul steps forward. You are not being tested. You are being reminded. Reminded that there is something in you that no outer chaos can dissolve. Something deeper than your opinions, louder than your fears, and more stable than your surroundings. That something is what we name God. And when you learn to see it, not just as a concept but as a presence, then even waiting in line or wiping tears becomes part of spiritual practice. There's a reason the saints and sages didn't spend their lives chasing perfect conditions. They knew the truth. There are no perfect conditions. There is only awareness. And awareness transforms whatever it touches. You've probably said it before, I just need a better job, or once I move out, or when things calm down, as if peace is hiding behind a rearranged life. But peace is not circumstantial. Peace is spiritual clarity. And clarity can bloom in the middle of a mess. This is not permission to settle. It is power to reclaim your now. You don't need to fake gratitude for hardship or pretend to enjoy pain. You simply need to stop postponing your recognition of God until the external is prettier. If you only see God in comfort, you will miss Him in 90% of your life. Start where you are. That is the doorway. Not where you wish you were, not where you think you should be. Here. Because here is the only place transformation is ever born. Not in the imagined someday, but in the gritty, breathing, inconvenient now. Spiritual maturity is not about always feeling calm. It is about remembering your essence when you feel anything but calm. It is the decision to stand inside chaos and say, even here, the sacred lives. This work, this real, spiritual work, is not about escape. It is about vision. It is about training yourself to recognize the divine inside details, inside repetition, inside challenge, inside silence. Noticing it doesn't mean the pain goes away, but it does mean the pain gains meaning. Right where you are is the only place you can truly touch the infinite, not as an idea, but as a living presence. The moment you declare a place sacred, your awareness changes, your energy lifts, your speech softens, your mind opens, and all of life starts responding not to your complaints but to your clarity. You will still pay bills. You will still misunderstand people. You will still get tired. But now, you will know that none of those things block the divine. They simply reveal where you still think God isn't. There is no other moment. This one right here, right now is it. All the holiness you are waiting for is waiting for you to notice it. And when you do, you won't just feel better. You'll start to live better. You'll start to choose better. You'll start to move not from panic or pressure, but from presence. And presence is power. There is a subtle lie wrapped inside the longing for better days. The idea that once circumstances shift, once they soften or cooperate, then your clarity will rise. That when the external world changes, your internal power will finally feel valid. But the truth is sharper and far more liberating. Circumstance is not the enemy. Circumstance is the terrain in which your spiritual muscles grow. The rain doesn't ruin the path, it reveals your willingness to walk. The traffic doesn't block your journey, it shows you whether your peace is real or conditional. The delay doesn't steal your progress, it tests whether your vision is fueled by appearance or by understanding. You don't need the storm to stop before you center yourself. You need to stop outsourcing your center to the storm. This isn't about pretending hardship feels good. It's about understanding that hardship does not define you unless you let it. When you see every circumstance as neutral ground waiting to be activated by your perspective, you stop waiting for rescue. You become the one who rewrites the atmosphere. There will always be something you didn't ask for, a person who doesn't change, a deadline that tightens, a loss that lingers. And if you let each one dictate your emotional state, then you are not living, you are reacting. You were not born to react. You were born to respond from depth. And that depth is not reactive, it is creative. It does not look around and ask, "What is happening to me?" It looks within and answers, "What will I bring to this?" This shift from waiting for life to cooperate to deciding that you will meet life as it is and still bring clarity, that's when everything begins to open. Emmet Fox spoke often about the role of thought. He taught that the outer life is shaped not by luck, but by the mental patterns you agree with. If you live by the assumption that your circumstances determine your worth, your peace, or your direction, you will always feel ungrounded. But when you recognize that every situation carries within it the seed of power, not because the situation is good, but because you are awake, then nothing external can truly trap you. You've seen this in others. The person who walks through grief with a strange grace, the one who meets betrayal with wisdom, not revenge. They are not superhuman. They are simply grounded in something deeper than events. They know that the circumstance is not the cause of their clarity, it's the canvas. When your job feels small, or your relationship feels stuck, or your finances feel uncertain, remember this: these are conditions. They are not conclusions. They can reveal, but they cannot restrict unless you give them permission. And it's not just the hard moments that deceive you. Ease can deceive you too. You can become passive when things are soft. You can become lazy with your power when the pressure is off. But true spiritual development is consistent. It doesn't wait for intensity or hide in comfort. It uses everything. What if your current situation, just as it is not in your way, but is actually the tailor-made doorway for your next level of clarity? What if this delay is training your discernment? What if this conflict is refining your compassion? What if this discomfort is introducing you to yourself? You do not have to enjoy the pain to find meaning inside it. You do not have to like what's happening to decide who you will be inside it. That is the shift. And once you see it, the desire to blame or stall or wait begins to dissolve. Not because the outer situation is fixed, but because your stance has changed. And once your stance changes, you start generating a different energy. One that does not beg for miracles, but becomes the grounds on which miracles can happen. You will notice this in small ways. First, your breath returns quicker. Your irritation dissolves faster. Your sense of urgency transforms into precision. These are not small things. They are evidence of spiritual authority. Evidence that you are no longer controlled by the conditions, but are shaping how those conditions live inside your mind. Don't wait for everything to be perfect before you practice presence. Practice presence and watch how that changes your relationship to imperfection. This is not idealism. It is responsibility. And responsibility is freedom. Because when you no longer fear circumstances, you no longer postpone power. And when you no longer postpone power, You start to walk like someone who understands. This moment is not an obstacle to God, it is an opportunity to remember Him. The shaping force of your life is not what happens to you, it is what happens within you. And what happens within you is determined by thought. Not surface thought, not temporary moods, but the core atmosphere you accept and live from. That atmosphere is not decorative, it is directive. It directs the way you interpret the world, and ultimately, the way the world responds to you. When Emmet Fox said, "Life is consciousness," he wasn't offering a metaphor. He was stating a law. Your outer experience cannot permanently outpace the content of your inner field. And your inner field is maintained every hour by what you repeatedly believe, expect, and energize through attention. This is not abstract, it's practical. The way you walk into a room, the way you speak to a cashier, the way you narrate your own day in your head, all of these are not just reflections of your mindset. They are instructions to the universe. They are invitations, and the universe never fails to respond in kind. You may not realize it, but you're already proving this principle. Every time you anticipate tension and find it, every time you assume rejection and feel its sting, every time you predict disappointment and it lands with eerie accuracy, you're not cursed, you're aligned, but with the wrong signal. The point is not to blame yourself for what you experience. It is to awaken to the power you've been using unconsciously. Because once you see the law at work, you stop asking whether it's real and start learning how to work with it on purpose. Your mind is not a mirror, it is a projector. It casts meaning, it colors situations, it steers behavior. And when left untrained, it will default to the most familiar pattern, not the most accurate one. This is why transformation is not about controlling outer events. It is about reconditioning the inner lens through which those events pass. If that lens is built from fear, you will see threats. If it's shaped by shame, you will find judgment. But if it is grounded in clarity and spiritual principle, then even conflict becomes data, not danger. There's a discipline to this, a mental steadiness. You do not drift into empowered thinking. You direct yourself there, and direction requires a decision. Will you become a student of your own inner climate? Will you observe what thoughts you nurture and which ones you simply inherited? Some thoughts are not yours. You pick them up from the culture, from your parents, from past disappointment, but they live in you like tenants, unquestioned and undisturbed, until now. If you don't intentionally evict what no longer serves, it will keep decorating your mind. It will keep shaping your perception, attracting situations that match its tone. This is not punishment. It is correspondence. Like attracts like, not in a magical sense, but in a deeply logical one. You notice what aligns with your assumption. You respond to what confirms your bias. And that confirmation cycle becomes your personal truth. To interrupt it, you don't need to force positivity. You need to re-establish neutrality, clear the fog of assumption, and begin again from presence, not hope. Presence. Hope is a fine starting point, but presence is the engine. Presence says, right now, I am choosing to direct my attention not toward fantasy, but toward truth. And truth is, you are not your thoughts. You are the awareness that notices and chooses which thoughts to keep. This awareness is the quiet seat of your power. It is the place from which you reclaim authorship of your narrative. And that narrative determines the quality of your vibration not in mystical waves, but in the tone of your actions, the openness of your posture, the clarity of your words. Everything begins with tone. Every meeting, every decision, every intention. Your tone, your mental emotional vibration, is what others feel before you speak. It is what you live in before outcomes arrive. And if you ignore it, you'll keep chasing results while unknowingly repelling them. You do not have to fix your entire life to feel aligned. You simply need to reset the atmosphere in which your life unfolds. And that begins with a decision to think consciously. Thinking consciously doesn't mean obsessing. It means watching, directing, shifting gently. It means catching the spiral before it takes root. It means reminding yourself that fear is not final, and that a single breath can disrupt the entire loop. This is spiritual sovereignty, not mystical, but methodical. It is how people in the worst conditions still carry peace. It is how people with no roadmap still find joy. Because they've learned the secret. It's not the field that shapes the mind. It's the mind that shapes the field. Your awareness is not passive. It is a catalyst. It does not just witness life, it activates it. The moment you bring conscious attention to a situation, you alter its frequency. Not because attention is magic, but because attention is energy. And energy reorganizes the field. You have walked through rooms that felt dead until you entered them. You have spoken a single sentence that shifted the mood in a conversation. You have listened to someone in silence and watched them open up in ways they didn't expect. These moments are not accidents. They are demonstrations of what you carry. The power in you is not loud. It is not egoic. It does not demand recognition, but it changes things. And the more you trust it, the more available it becomes. Most people are waiting for the external to move first. They want the world to improve, the people around them to be more aware, the schedule to lighten up. But power doesn't wait. Power enters. It arrives with clarity and transforms the atmosphere by its presence. You are the activating force not because you control others, but because you control how you show up. Your stance, your tone, your level of alertness, these shape the outcome before a single result arrives. This is not about pretending to be composed. It is about cultivating genuine composure, the kind that comes from knowing that your awareness is enough to sanctify a moment. That your calm is not weak, but directive. That your words can steer tension toward truth. That your silence can clear confusion, if it is intentional. In every moment, you have the opportunity to either amplify chaos or transmit coherence. You are never neutral. Your presence either adds noise or restores signal. And once you realize this, you stop asking whether a situation is worthy of your energy. You begin asking, what kind of energy am I bringing to it? This is spiritual maturity, not needing life to behave before you do, not needing others to agree before you become grounded, not needing the moment to look sacred before you treat it as holy. You do not bless something with ritual. You bless it by the quality of your attention. The moment you truly see someone, they feel it. The moment you truly acknowledge a task, it changes texture. The moment you truly inhabit your breath, the entire room feels different, even if no one else knows why. That is not performance. That is presence. And presence is the engine behind all transformation. Without it, even the right actions feel hollow. With it, even small gestures become significant. That is why awareness is the first tool of power, not knowledge, not technique, not external mastery, but presence. Undistracted, intentional, alert. This is why the world does not change from ideas alone. It changes from embodiment, from people who carry a frequency that rearranges the space they enter, not with force, but with depth. You have met people like this. You remember them not because of what they said, but because of how they saw. Their gaze was steady, their words were clean, their energy was quiet but unwavering. They weren't perfect, but they were anchored, and that anchoring changed you. You are capable of becoming this anchor not just occasionally, but consistently, not just when things go well, but especially when they don't. That is when power becomes real, when it is no longer dependent on outer coordination, but flows from inner orientation. You orient yourself by choosing again. Each moment offers you this. Choose to become conscious. Choose to stop mirroring the tension around you. Choose to reset the tone, not escalate the drama. Choose to radiate instead of absorb. When you understand that you are the activating force, you stop blaming others for the atmosphere you're in. You stop expecting the day to feel better before you do. You begin to realize that your state is not just personal, it's participatory. It moves things. It changes tone. It breaks loops. This awareness brings a different kind of responsibility. Not the heavy kind, not guilt, but the kind that empowers. The kind that reminds you, if I'm here, I can shift this. Not fix everything, but shift something. And sometimes, a shift is all that's needed. A new tone, a grounded breath, a single word spoken from presence instead of panic. These are not small things. They are spiritual interventions. They do not just change the moment. They change momentum. When you show up like this often enough, people begin to notice. Not because you advertise it, but because they feel different around you. Not entertained, not impressed, but settled, cleared, reminded of something solid inside themselves. This is not charisma, it's coherence. And coherence is not a talent, it is a decision to live aligned, to speak from clarity, to act from presence. And this decision becomes a way of life. Surface appearances are rarely accurate. They speak in symbols, not in truths. What you see with your eyes is only the visible crust of a deeper process at work. And if you mistake the crust for the core, you will live in constant reaction. You will interpret delays as denials, tension as punishment, silence as absence. But once you learn to read beyond the visible, a new dimension of clarity begins to open. Disorder does not mean disfavor. What looks like chaos may be a reconfiguration. What feels like stagnation may be a moment of quiet preparation. And what appears as loss may be the exact subtraction required for something higher to take form. This is not a call to ignore pain or deny reality. It is an invitation to hold reality in both hands, acknowledging what it looks like, while understanding that what it looks like is not the full story. Emmet Fox taught that the spiritual world and the material world are not separate realms but two levels of perception. The spiritual is the substance, the material is the shadow. The spiritual is the blueprint, the material is the printout, and if you focus only on the printout, you will miss the code that generated it. When something in your life seems to be breaking down, it does not mean your intention has failed. It may mean that old structures are unable to support the frequency you are beginning to carry. Growth often outpaces architecture, and when it does, the structure must adjust or fall. This is how clarity works. It begins by disturbing the surface. It makes old beliefs feel tight. It makes old relationships feel brittle. It makes outdated routines feel heavy. These symptoms are not problems. They are signals. They are pointing you inward, asking you to examine what you've been assuming, tolerating, or expecting. Once you begin to see beyond surface, your patience expands. You stop demanding instant visibility. You begin to trust invisible movement. You understand that the seed does not sprout on demand, and yet, the moment it is planted, the entire pattern of the tree is already contained within it. You are like that seed, and your circumstances, no matter how loud or dim, are only partial indicators of what's forming within you. This shift in sight changes your language. You stop labeling things as good or bad so quickly. You start asking better questions. What is this showing me? What is this stripping away? What might this be preparing me to hold? You begin to interpret life less like a judge and more like a student. You begin to observe the unfolding, not as punishment, but as process. And the more you do this, the less reactive you become. You will still feel discomfort. You will still feel fear. But those feelings no longer paralyze you. They become signals, not stop signs, but guideposts. You begin to say, "This is not what I expected, but maybe it's what I need to see." That sentence alone can break a lifetime of resistance. It is resistance to what is that causes suffering to intensify. Not the pain itself, but the mental posture of denial, blame, and distortion. The moment you allow yourself to see clearly, to accept without collapse, a new kind of strength arrives. not the strength of force, but of clarity. And clarity is unshakable. You do not need mystical abilities to see beyond appearance. You need stillness. You need a willingness to delay judgment. You need to become more curious than controlling. These qualities are not glamorous. They are not instantly rewarded, but they build something rare, a calm intelligence, an ability to walk through storms without losing direction. People will feel it in you. They will call it maturity, wisdom, poise. But what it really is vision. Vision that sees the deeper pattern even when the surface is loud. Vision that understands. Just because something isn't visible yet doesn't mean it's not real. Vision that refuses to worship circumstances or define identity by what is currently observable. The most dangerous trap in spiritual life is mistaking appearance for reality. When you equate visibility with truth, you start chasing the visible. You start performing. You start demanding signs instead of developing sight. But when you trust the invisible, you move differently. You speak less from urgency, more from clarity. You navigate not by confirmation, but by conviction. And that is when the unseen begins to take form. Pain is not the enemy. It is a signal, a messenger carrying data from the deeper regions of your being. To treat pain as a failure is to miss its instruction. To flee from pain is to prolong confusion. But when you turn toward it, something shifts. The fog begins to lift. The chaos reveals its contours. Clarity begins to emerge, not in spite of the discomfort, but because you allowed yourself to face it. Most people have been trained to suppress pain or drown it in noise. Distraction becomes a drug, and avoidance becomes a habit. But the more you avoid the discomfort, the more it shapes your life from the shadows. What you don't face doesn't disappear, it just becomes the unconscious driver of your decisions, your fears, your voice. To meet pain directly requires courage. Not dramatic courage, but steady honesty. It asks you to stop numbing, to stop blaming, to stop pretending that everything is fine when something inside you is calling for examination. You may feel the urge to explain the pain away, to attach it to a person or an event. But the most profound insights emerge when you resist the temptation to externalize. The shift happens when you say, "This hurts, and it's mine to understand." Not because you caused it, but because only you can extract its meaning. Pain has texture. It is not a flat sensation. When you sit with it, not wallow in it, but really sit with it, you begin to notice layers. The first layer might be shock or anger. The second might be fear. Beneath that, grief. Beneath that, longing. And below all of it, often, is a deep invitation to see yourself more clearly, to know what you truly need, to strip away what is no longer aligned. Pain humbles the intellect. It demands presence. It doesn't care about your resume or your titles or your plans. It wants to know if you're listening, if you're willing to drop into the body, to feel the tightness in the chest, the tremble in the hands, the silence in the room. This is not indulgence. It is intelligence. Emotional pain, when fully met, becomes spiritual sight. It clarifies what matters. It burns away pretense. It shows you where you have been living from assumption instead of awareness. You begin to notice what you've been holding on to. The identities, the stories, the expectations. You see how much energy you've spent trying to maintain an image that no longer fits. And then, with time, the tension loosens. A breath comes in. The clarity arises. Not a mental answer, but a knowing. Something old is leaving, and something new is ready to be chosen. You do not have to love the pain, but you can begin to respect it. You can recognize that pain is not just something to survive, it is something to learn from. It is an initiation, not into suffering, but into deeper self-understanding. There is always a temptation to compare your pain to someone else's, to downplay it, or to use it for status. Neither serves. Pain is not a competition or a performance. It is a teacher. Its lessons are specific to you, and only when you stop measuring it can you start receiving from it. At times, the lessons are clear. This relationship is not aligned. This habit is costing you. This belief no longer holds. At other times, the lesson is patience. To stay, to feel, to soften. To let yourself unravel just enough to remember who you are beneath the tension. Emmet Fox did not glamorize suffering, but he never ran from it either. He taught that pain is not the work, but it often precedes it, that it breaks down the false so the real can emerge, that it wakes us up from the trance of appearances and invites us back to inner truth. In that space, you learn to stop begging life to be easier and start asking yourself how to become more honest, more spacious, more available to truth. That is how transformation begins, not by force, but by willingness. Pain is not here to punish, it is here to point. And once you stop resisting, once you stop demanding it vanish, once you start listening, the pointing becomes clear, and clarity is the beginning of liberation. You are never stuck in pain. You are only as stuck as your willingness to remain asleep to its message. The moment you decide to see, the moment you open to understanding, the path begins to appear. Slowly, perhaps, unevenly, but undeniably, and that is the shift. From asking, "Why is this happening to me?" to realizing, "This is revealing something I'm ready to meet." When that shift lands, the pain begins to dissolve not because it is erased, but because it has delivered what it came to show. Mastery does not arrive wrapped in ease. It does not announce itself with applause or guarantee its own arrival by virtue of desire. Mastery is not granted. It is forged. And it is forged through repetition, through friction, through choosing again and again to align with clarity, even when it would be easier to revert. There is an illusion that wisdom comes from reading or thinking or understanding intellectually, but the truth is more demanding. Wisdom is not what you know, it is how you walk. It is how you respond when the script doesn't match the plan. It is how you recenter in real time when emotion tries to hijack the moment. Mastery is invisible to those who haven't walked its path. It doesn't always look like power. Sometimes it looks like restraint, like silence, like leaving a room without justifying yourself, like saying no with softness and not shrinking afterward. It's the discipline of being the same person in private as you are in public, because the audience has become irrelevant. You reach that place not by epiphany, but by practice, by failing forward, by applying what you believe in the moments when it matters most, when your ego is loud, your emotions are raw, and your patterns beg to take over. No one can do this for you. No teaching, no book, no guide can walk this path on your behalf. They can point, but they cannot transfer the flame. You must light it and carry it, even when the wind tries to blow it out. Each time you choose alignment over reaction, something strengthens. It might be invisible to the outside world, but internally, a new groove is carved, a new muscle is shaped. And over time, those muscles begin to hold you upright when things tilt. That is when mastery begins to take form not as performance, but as posture. This path can feel thankless at first. There are no shortcuts. There is no medal for choosing not to argue, for pausing before reacting, for letting go of control in favor of clarity. But every choice shapes the terrain of your inner life. And that terrain becomes the ground from which everything else grows. Emmet Fox often emphasized the necessity of mental discipline, not for perfection, but for liberation. Because without discipline, you become a hostage of the mind's old programming. You live in loops. You repeat what hurts because it is familiar, and you mistake emotional comfort for spiritual alignment. Discipline is not repression, it is refinement. It is the willingness to pause, to feel the urge to defend or collapse, and to choose something higher not out of obligation, but out of clarity. You know where the lower path leads. You've walked it. It's time to build another. Mastery asks for repetition without applause, for effort without instant reward. for integrity that holds even when no one is watching. These are not glamorous acts, but they are the scaffolding of real power. Power that does not waver when misunderstood. Power that does not inflate when praised. Power that does not vanish when plans fall apart. This kind of power comes from refinement, and refinement requires fire. Not literal fire, but the heat of living in contrast, of feeling the pull of the old while choosing the new. Each time you stand in that tension and decide not to collapse into habit, the old loses a bit of its grip, and the new gains momentum. There will be moments when you regress. That is part of the process. You will snap when you meant to stay grounded. You will retreat when you hope to stay open. But these moments do not erase your progress. They simply invite your recommitment. Mastery is not a clean line. It is a spiral. You revisit the same themes with new awareness. You encounter the same triggers from a slightly higher perspective. And if you can stay with the process without dramatizing, without quitting, you will notice the changes. You will feel your center return faster. You will notice your judgments soften. You will respond with less noise and more presence. You will begin to carry peace into situations that used to fragment you. And one day, without fanfare, you will realize that you are no longer driven by the same impulses, not because the world changed, but because you did. That is mastery, not dominion over others, but dominion over your own internal weather. It is not about being perfect. It is about being willing to return, willing to refine, willing to live in alignment when no one demands it and nothing rewards it, except the deep knowing that you are no longer at war with yourself. The law of correspondence does not bend to belief. It operates whether or not you acknowledge it. As above, so below. As within, so without. This is not poetic suggestion. It is a structural principle. The outer world mirrors the state of your inner world. What you consistently hold in thought, feeling, and expectation becomes the shape of your experience. When Emmet Fox taught about mental equivalence, he wasn't describing a fantasy. He was describing how consciousness forms substance. The idea is simple, but demanding. Your life conditions correspond to the vibrational tone of your inner atmosphere. If your inner world is filled with contradiction, fear, or resentment, that dissonance will be reflected back to you, sometimes subtly, sometimes bluntly. This truth is not punishment. It is precision. It means that nothing is random. It means that what you continue to experience is not just happening around you, it is showing you what remains unresolved within you. This can be a confronting realization. It means that even the parts of your life you dislike are communicating something, not about your worth, but about your focus, about your hidden agreements, about the tone of belief that runs silently beneath your words. When you begin to take this seriously, not as superstition, but as spiritual law, you gain access to extraordinary clarity. You stop reacting to the mirror and start working with the image source. You stop demanding that others change and begin asking, what pattern in me is keeping this reflection alive? The mistake many make is trying to rearrange the mirror. They move people, places, and projects around, hoping that a new configuration will bring peace. But unless the internal pattern changes, the external arrangement will eventually echo the same noise. To change what is visible, you must revise what is invisible, and that requires deep honesty, not guilt, not shame, but a willingness to stop defending the current version of reality and begin revising it at the level of thought. This is not about forcing positive thinking. It is about cultivating coherent thinking, thought that aligns with truth, with clarity, with wholeness. Thought that does not vibrate from fear, but from principle. If you believe people cannot be trusted, you will continually attract situations that confirm it. Not because the world is broken, but because your lens is distorted. If you believe you are unworthy of rest, you will sabotage ease when it arrives, not because you lack time, but because you carry guilt for slowing down. Your beliefs create your behavioral posture. Your posture invites response. That response becomes evidence, and evidence reinforces belief. Until you interrupt the loop, it continues perfectly predictable, entirely misattributed. To break the loop, you must observe yourself without judgment. What stories are you rehearsing? What emotions feel safer than others? What expectations do you carry into each day before a single thing happens? These questions are not mental exercises. They are spiritual diagnostics. They reveal the tone of your inner broadcast. And once you see that tone clearly, you can begin to adjust it not instantly, but deliberately. Adjustment is a process. You begin by noticing what you repeat. You interrupt the old mental script when it tries to play. You remind yourself that thought is not destiny, it is suggestion. And you can choose which suggestions to endorse. This is not bypassing reality. It is transforming it. Because reality is not one fixed thing, it is the sum total of what you habitually perceive and energize. And you are the one assigning value to each moment. You are the one giving meaning to each silence. You are the one deciding whether to declare a door closed or simply unseen. When you begin to shift your inner atmosphere, the world begins to respond, sometimes quickly, sometimes slowly, but always. Not because you're manipulating outcomes, but because you're creating new magnetic alignment. You will start to attract clarity, not just noise. Support, not sabotage. Conversations that nourish, not drain. Doors that reflect the decisions you've already made internally, not opportunities that tempt you back into old patterns. And you will know the shift is working not because everything looks perfect, but because your sense of agency has returned. You are no longer waiting to be chosen, rescued, or fixed. You are participating in the formation of your own field. The law of correspondence is not a reward system. It is a mirror system. And when the mirror reveals something painful, that's not a verdict. It's a signal, a call to revise, to elevate, to become the kind of thinker, feeler, and mover who vibrates from principle, not from pattern. This is not easy work, but it is sacred work. Because every time you align your inner world with truth, the outer world must respond, not by magic, but by law. No transformation is sustainable while you see yourself as a victim. It may be justified. It may be true in a historical sense. Others may have harmed you, failed you, underestimated you. But the moment you internalize the role of the powerless, you forfeit the authority to reshape your life. Victimhood seduces through comfort. It tells you that you don't have to try, don't have to risk, don't have to reframe. It says the damage has been done, and now you are owed something. And while this narrative might bring short-term sympathy, it destroys long-term strength. Because the longer you wait to be repaid, the more disconnected you become from your own power to create. Refusing the victim role is not about ignoring pain or denying injustice. It's about recognizing that healing is not delivered by those who harmed you. It's activated by the stance you take today. You cannot rewrite what happened, but you can choose who you become because of it. Emmet Fox taught that our consciousness is the seed of our experience. That means power must be claimed, not granted. You are the one who decides whether a wound becomes a defining feature or a refining force. No one else can make that choice for you. Personal accountability is not a burden, it is a bridge. It is the point where you cross from powerlessness to participation. You stop asking why something happened and start asking how to transform what remains. This shift is not about blame, it's about authorship. You're not here to write a clean script, you're here to write a courageous one. Some people confuse ownership with guilt, but guilt is stagnant. Ownership is active. Guilt says, I am broken. Ownership says, I am building. One locks you in the past. The other opens the path forward. You can acknowledge every failure, betrayal, and regret without turning them into identity. You can look at what's been done without letting it dictate what you become. Because the deepest spiritual work is not about erasing the past, it's about choosing the future with clarity. There is a quiet revolution that happens the moment you stop needing the outer world to apologize before you reclaim your strength. You recognize that justice in the world may be imperfect, but justice in your own soul can be immediate. It comes the moment you say, "I am not what happened to me. I am what I choose to do with it now." This mindset is not denial, it is discipline. The discipline of choosing coherence over chaos, of choosing inner alignment over emotional retaliation, of choosing your path forward over endlessly rehearsing what went wrong. You will still feel pain, but now the pain becomes raw material. You will still remember the past, but now the memory sharpens your discernment instead of weakening your resolve. You will still encounter injustice, but now you will respond from center, not from collapse. There is power in deciding that no one else gets to write the ending for you, that you will not be a cautionary tale, but a demonstration of possibility. Not because everything has gone well, but because you decided to live well anyway. Victimhood feeds on attention. It craves validation, but empowerment feeds on action. It grows quietly, in the background, as you make better choices without demanding applause. As you say less and build more. As you transform energy that once held you back into fuel for what you're becoming. It's not always dramatic. Sometimes it's as simple as choosing not to respond to an insult, choosing to wake up and begin again instead of reliving the same resentment. Choosing to ask yourself, what would a person of clarity do here? And then doing it, even if no one sees. These small shifts accumulate. They become character. They become legacy. They become the invisible weight of spiritual strength that others feel when you enter a room. Not the weight of control, but of quiet stability. Of someone who is no longer blaming the mirror, but adjusting the stance. The moment you stop needing life to be fair in order to be powerful, everything changes. You're no longer negotiating with reality. You're collaborating with it. You're listening, learning, shaping, becoming. This is the ground of freedom, not perfect conditions, but unshakable authorship. And from here, you are no longer reactive. You are responsive. You no longer carry the past as identity. You carry it as instruction. And every step you take from this posture is a declaration. I am not what was done. I am what I decide now. Words are not neutral. They are instruments of creation. Each phrase you speak reinforces a structure within yourself and sends a signal into your environment. Language is not merely for expression, it is a form of invocation. It calls forth the frequency of your thoughts and gives shape to your reality. You do not simply describe the world with words, you shape how you experience it. The tone, rhythm, and content of your language reveal and reinforce your inner state. This is why careless speech is never truly harmless. It builds neural grooves. It conditions perception. It teaches your nervous system what to expect. When Emmet Fox spoke of the power of affirmations, he didn't mean repeating empty phrases. He meant speaking from conviction, speaking from alignment, declaring what is spiritually true not as a wish, but as a stance, a spoken declaration of what is real at the level of principle, even before it is visible at the level of fact. When your words align with truth, they don't just sound better, they resonate. They organize your energy, they clarify your path. They remind your emotions of what your spirit already knows. The opposite is also true. When your words spiral into gossip, self-doubt, complaint, or projection, they do not simply pass, they embed. They plant seeds in your mind and in the minds of those who hear you. Those seeds grow into assumptions, into expectations, into behaviors, and soon, what was spoken in haste becomes the climate you live in. This is not about walking on verbal eggshells. It is about speaking with intention. It is about knowing that language is never just casual, it is always creative. Even sarcasm, even self-deprecation, Even throwaway lines, they leave residue. That residue becomes your field, and your field becomes your reality. Begin noticing what you say when you're alone. The monologue that runs silently through your mind as you move through the day. Is it clean or cluttered? Is it centered or chaotic? Are you rehearsing empowerment or feeding anxiety? This internal dialogue shapes your mood, your posture, your openness to possibility. It is not background noise, it is instruction. And if you don't revise it consciously, it will run the same loops, attracting the same results. Clean language is not about being poetic, it is about being precise. It means refusing to exaggerate your pain, refusing to curse your own path, refusing to speak defeat before anything has even happened. This doesn't mean denying emotion, it means directing it. It means letting truth lead the conversation instead of letting fear narrate your life. There is a profound shift that occurs when you begin to treat your speech as sacred. You listen more closely, not just to others, but to yourself. You pause before projecting your frustration. You choose silence instead of clutter. And when you do speak, your words carry weight not because they are loud, but because they are aligned. When you speak with clarity, people notice, not because you are impressive, but because your language brings relief. It brings structure. It calms. It does not try to dominate, it creates space. And that space becomes an invitation for coherence to enter the room. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can say is very little. A single line, grounded in truth, spoken without defense, can cut through hours of confusion. That is not performance, it is authority. And authority is not volume, it is alignment. The old language you've inherited, language of limitation, of passivity, of victimhood, will try to speak up again. You'll feel it in the automatic responses, the rehearsed complaints, the jokes that mask pain. But you are no longer required to give it airtime. You can choose new speech not just externally, but within. Start with one sentence, one clean phrase you can return to throughout the day. A phrase that centers you, that reminds you, that does not beg for change but stands inside clarity. Repeat it not as magic, but as calibration. Let your language become your guide, not your echo. Let it lift your tone, not trap your patterns. Let it shape your atmosphere before your circumstances get a chance to define it. This is the real power of speech, not in its performance, but in its frequency. You are already speaking spells. The question is, are they ones you want to live in? The moment you begin treating every sentence as structure, your world starts to respond differently. Not because you manipulated it, but because you finally spoke to it from truth. And truth always returns to itself. It cannot be lost. It can only be ignored or remembered. Living without delay means no longer postponing your presence, your purpose, or your peace for some imagined future. It means withdrawing your investment from the fantasy that life begins once things settle down, or once everything is in place. It means choosing now, not someday, as the place where you meet your power. There is always a temptation to defer alignment, to wait for more money, better health, different people. But every time you delay living fully, you train your nervous system to distrust the present. You teach your mind that what you have now is not enough. You hold your breath emotionally, spiritually, waiting for external permission to exhale. The truth is simpler and less convenient. There is no perfect moment. There is no ideal alignment of circumstance that suddenly unlocks the door to your grounded self. Every doorway you're seeking is accessed by a single point of entry right now. You've been taught to prepare endlessly, to rehearse before you begin, to analyze the terrain until it's safe. But the spiritual terrain never becomes safe by conventional standards. It becomes sacred the moment you step onto it with presence, with agency, with intention. Postponing your power serves no one. It certainly doesn't protect you. It keeps you small under the illusion of caution. It wraps you in inertia and then convinces you it's wisdom. But wisdom without movement is fear in disguise. You were not designed to wait for life to be ready for you. Life is waiting for you to be ready for it. The people you admire, those who speak from authority, who move with clarity, they are not living from perfection. They are living from decision. They decided not to delay their expression. They decided not to hide behind the idea of timing. They spoke even when their voice shook. They built even when the outcome was uncertain. This is not recklessness. It is alignment in motion. It is refusing to treat the future as your sanctuary and deciding that this moment, messy and unfinished as it may be, is holy ground. Living without delay does not mean rushing. It means presence. It means no longer outsourcing your joy to a checklist. No longer saying, "I'll rest when it's done," or "I'll speak when I'm sure," or "I'll be kind when I have more energy." It means embodying your values now, not perfectly, but consistently. Every time you delay love, you withdraw it from the people around you. Every time you delay peace, you feed the belief that chaos must resolve first. Every time you delay action, you reinforce the narrative that you are not yet worthy to begin. But you are. You are not waiting for the right mood or the right alignment of stars. You are reclaiming your right to be here now fully, unapologetically, without dragging the weight of delay behind you. This kind of living feels different. It carries a quiet immediacy. You become more responsive, less reactive. You stop rehearsing conversations in your head and start showing up to the real ones. You stop stacking conditions on your happiness and start finding peace in breath, in rhythm, in honesty. You no longer confuse preparation with avoidance. You still prepare, but from clarity, not fear. You move not because everything is ready, but because you are no longer willing to let this moment slip into abstraction. The spiritual life is not lived in theory. It is lived in this body, in this breath, in this day. It is not lived in bookshelves or retreats. It is lived in the way you speak to a stranger, in the tone you use with yourself, in the choices you make when no one is watching. You cannot postpone alignment and expect it to mature. It matures through use, through risk, through correction, through the daily practice of showing up without armor and doing the next right thing, not the perfect thing, just the next honest step. And when you do this consistently, something begins to shift. The present stops feeling like an obstacle. It becomes your field of influence. It becomes the space where love lands, where clarity sharpens, where joy is no longer a visitor, but a quiet current beneath all things. This is the reward of living now. You stop fantasizing about peace and begin to generate it. You stop craving purpose and begin to walk in it. You stop waiting for life to begin and realize it already has, and it's been waiting for you to join it fully. Faith is often misunderstood. It's treated like a blind hope, a passive surrender, a mental exercise to quiet fear. But true faith is far from passive. It is not soft, and it is not naive. Faith is directed intelligence. It is the deliberate orientation of thought and energy toward the unshakable reality, beneath change, beneath disruption, beneath form. Faith is not a wish. It is a decision to see order where others see disorder, to trust the integrity of spiritual law even when facts contradict it. Not because you are in denial, but because you know that principle does not fluctuate with appearance. You already live by faith. Every time you flip a light switch, you trust electricity will flow. Every time you inhale, you trust the air will support you. What you need is not more faith, it is clearer direction. Faith must be aimed. It must be claimed consciously, not scattered through vague wishes. When Emmet Fox taught about the mental equivalent, he emphasized that what you hold steadily in thought becomes your experience. That means your faith isn't just a feeling, it's a tool, a mechanism for shaping your field. But like any tool, it must be handled with precision. If you believe in chaos, that's where your faith is working. If you believe that you are powerless, then your faith is reinforcing the very chains you wish to break. The question is never, "Do I have faith?" The real question is, where is my faith currently aimed? Faith placed in fear generates more evidence for fear. Faith placed in loss magnifies your awareness of what is missing. But faith placed in order, in healing, in wholeness, even before it is visible, begins to shape your experience from the inside out. This is not optimism. Optimism is often reactive, conditional on mood or outcome. Faith is structural. It's the quiet decision to orient yourself to truth, regardless of fluctuation. It's knowing that the essence of life is not chaos, it is harmony, and that this harmony is not a fantasy, but a foundation, present beneath all seeming disorder. Directing faith means choosing your references carefully. It means feeding your mind with images and thoughts that affirm possibility, not limitation. It means withdrawing attention from stories of doom and choosing not to anchor your identity in outcomes. This kind of practice is not loud. It's not public. No one may see you doing it, but internally, it becomes the ground beneath your feet. A subtle but profound confidence that life is not against you, that intelligence moves through every event, and that even what breaks apart may be revealing a truer structure underneath. Faith works in layers. First, it calms the nervous system. Then it stabilizes thought. Then it allows you to respond with wisdom, not panic. This internal shift begins to affect your decisions, your communication, your posture, and slowly, the world around you begins to reflect a new coherence, not because everything becomes perfect, but because your orientation to imperfection has changed. You stop being tossed by every wave. You stop measuring truth by appearances. You begin to live from a kind of inner consistency, even when the outer world feels unpredictable. That consistency is not resistance, it's resonance. You're aligning with something deeper than condition. This practice of faith is not about avoiding doubt. Doubt will appear, but faith doesn't eliminate doubt. It places it in context. It acknowledges it without worshiping it. It hears the fear, but chooses not to be ruled by it. This is not detachment, it's maturity. You are no longer asking life to feel safe before you trust it. You're trusting the structure beneath sensation. You're trusting that divine intelligence did not vanish because circumstances became difficult. And you're trusting that your own alignment can become the tuning fork for the reality you wish to live. The most powerful people are not always the most visibly confident. They are often those who have learned to hold faith like a quiet flame in the center of their being, unmoved by wind, unmoved by weather. That flame does not shout, but it never goes out, because it has been tended through practice. Let your faith be guided not by external signs, but by principle, by what you know to be unchanging. Let it be the lens through which you see, speak, and act not as a strategy, but as your stance. And when it falters, which it will, simply return, not with guilt, but with clarity. You do not need perfect faith. You need persistent direction. And with that, the invisible begins to shape the visible not by chance, but by law. God does not vanish in the ordinary. Divinity is not suspended during errands, arguments, or exhaustion. There is no line separating the sacred from the mundane, except the one drawn by a distracted mind. The divine is not missing in the grind, it is embedded in it, waiting to be recognized. The modern mind has been trained to compartmentalize. Work belongs in one box, spirit in another. Peace is scheduled between obligations. Presence is reserved for weekends or wellness routines. But spiritual clarity does not obey compartments. It reveals itself where attention is placed, not where conditions are perfect. The grind, those unending tasks, repeated conversations, bills, emails, delays, is not outside your spiritual life. It is the material of it. It is the practice ground. It is the classroom. And the way you relate to these repetitions reveals far more about your spiritual maturity than what you say in meditation or study during a retreat. To bring God into the grind is not about forcing mystical interpretation onto everything. It is about remembering that consciousness infuses everything, that your tone on a phone call carries weight, that your posture, while doing laundry, communicates a message to your nervous system, that your breath, while stuck in traffic, can return you to alignment or drag you deeper into reactivity. You do not need silence to find stillness. You need intention, and intention does not require time, it requires direction. A 2-minute pause before a difficult task, done with awareness, can reorient your entire day. A single moment of clarity between interruptions can reset your tone. This is the essence of spiritual practice in real life, not isolation, but integration, not retreat from the world, but engagement with it, from depth. When Emmet Fox emphasized the power of thought, he wasn't referring only to lofty contemplation. He meant everyday thought, habitual thought, the mental undercurrent running through your most practical moments. When you bring attention to these micro moments, something opens. You realize that spiritual development is not a side project. It's a thread running through all things. It's how you hold yourself in a disagreement. It's the quality of presence you bring to a task you dislike. It's the way you return to center not after everything is resolved, but while everything is still unresolved. Even boredom holds an invitation. Even routine can be holy. It depends on how you enter it. If you approach life with a lens of obligation, you reduce yourself to a machine. If you approach it with the awareness that each action is a chance to infuse order, beauty, and coherence, you turn repetition into ritual. Washing the dishes can become an act of attention. Folding clothes can become a prayer for the one who wears them. Walking the same hallway every day can become a reminder of stability instead of a symbol of stuckness. This is not romanticizing the grind. It's reclaiming it. It's recognizing that power is not only found in breakthroughs and revelations, but in how you manage your energy inside repetition, in how you respond to the people who are always around, in how you speak to yourself when the day is long and no one is watching. The mistake is waiting for your environment to feel spiritual before choosing to act from a place of spirit. But if you always wait, you will never begin. The grind rarely announces itself as sacred. You must declare it so. You must decide that how you show up matters not in a performance sense, but in an energetic sense. When you stop resisting the grind, it stops feeling like confinement. It becomes a field where clarity can be practiced, where discipline becomes natural, where love is expressed in small, unseen choices. You don't need to escape your life to elevate it. You need to participate differently, to engage with the same responsibilities, but with a different lens. Not to get through the day, but to move through it as someone who remembers that divinity doesn't clock in and out. This is how presence becomes your baseline, not as an occasional moment, but as a steady tone. You begin to carry yourself with more care, not out of pressure, but because it feels better. You move more deliberately, not to impress, but to align. You speak with more clarity, not for performance, but because confusion is heavy and unnecessary. You begin to notice that God never left. You just weren't paying attention. And now you are. Nothing within you is disqualified from transformation. No wound is too deep, no memory too dark, no flaw too stubborn. The parts of you that seem furthest from the light are not barriers to the sacred, they are doorways into it. You do not need to earn your way into worthiness. You need only stop believing that certain pieces of you must be hidden for the divine to do its work. The mistake many make is treating spirituality like performance. Present the polished parts, speak the right words, bury the messy ones. But true spiritual growth is not theater, it's integration. And integration means bringing every part of you into the light, not to fix it first, but to include it. There is no spiritual power in fragmentation. There is only exhaustion. When you exile the parts of yourself that feel too raw, too reactive, too embarrassing, you create internal tension. You divide yourself. You become two people, the one who shows up with clarity and the one you secretly disown. But healing only happens when these selves stop being at war. This includes the part of you that still holds resentment, the part that's ashamed, the part that gets defensive, the part that wants to quit. These are not proof of your failure. They are evidence that something inside you is still alive, still reaching for resolution, still asking for presence. Wholeness is not about perfection. It is about relationship, how you relate to what lives in you. When you meet your flaws with harshness, they harden. When you meet them with honesty and curiosity, they begin to soften. This is not indulgence, it's intelligence. Nothing transforms under rejection, but everything responds to clear, steady attention. When Emmet Fox spoke of changing your mind to change your life, he wasn't asking you to pretend. He was asking you to choose again, to consciously redirect your attention not away from difficulty, but through it. To view each habit, each flaw, not as evidence of disqualification, but as raw material for refinement. This is how mastery is built, not by erasing what you've lived through, but by integrating it, making peace with what hurt, without letting it define what comes next, owning what you once hid, reclaiming what you abandoned to survive, turning what was once source of shame into a portal of connection. This kind of self-inclusion isn't always comfortable. It requires vulnerability. It requires stillness. It asks you to drop your defenses, not in front of others, but in front of yourself. It asks you to sit quietly and say, I see this part. I won't let it lead, but I will no longer leave it behind. When you do this, something opens. You start to feel less fragmented. You begin to understand your reactions instead of fearing them. You stop judging yourself for not being further along and begin respecting the pace of real transformation. There is no part of your history that cannot be alchemized, no belief that cannot be released, no pattern that cannot be softened. But the process begins with one decision: to stop treating your humanity as something to overcome. You are not becoming divine by escaping your human experience. You are remembering your divinity by embracing it. Even your anger can be instructive. Even your fatigue can carry wisdom. These emotions are not interruptions to the spiritual path. They are part of it. The goal is not to erase them. The goal is to meet them with clarity and let them evolve. Spiritual strength is not cold. It is not detached. It is deeply human. It feels fully. It forgives repeatedly. It returns to presence after every distraction. Not because it must be perfect, but because it knows that every moment offers the chance to begin again. You will still stumble. You will still say the wrong thing. You will still wish you had reacted differently. But now, instead of spiraling into shame, you will return more quickly. You will apologize without self-erasure. You will recommit without collapse. You will remind yourself that growth is not linear and that nothing inside you needs to be hidden for you to be loved, guided, or whole. You are already standing in the presence of the sacred. Your job is not to become worthy of it, it is to remove what blocks your awareness of it. And the greatest block is the belief that only part of you belongs. All of you belongs. The doubt, the wisdom, the fire, the fear, the wounds you've named too big, the dreams you've named too late, all of it is part of the architecture, and all of it can be worked with. You are already standing on the ground you've been searching for, not metaphorically, not in some symbolic sense, literally, right now, wherever you are, this is the place. This is the moment. This is the holy ground. All the striving, the learning, the seeking, it has not been wasted, but it has always led back here. To the simple, sometimes uncomfortable, deeply liberating truth, you don't need to arrive anywhere else to begin. You are already in the space where transformation is possible. And it begins not with movement, but with recognition. The sacred has never been elsewhere. It was not locked inside a course, a location, a title, or a breakthrough. It has always been embedded in the fabric of what you call ordinary. The moments you overlooked, the breath you dismissed, the details you tried to skip. Holiness was woven through all of it, waiting to be seen. What you thought was far off has been whispering through your life the entire time, not in thunderous revelations, but in the still voice that returns every time you get quiet. That voice is not trying to take you anywhere, it is trying to bring you back to this place, to this ground, to this breath. You've spent years trying to become something more, better, clearer, stronger, softer, wiser. But becoming is not always about adding. Often, it is remembering, removing what was never real, laying down what was borrowed, peeling off the layers that covered what has always been intact. You are not broken in need of fixing. You are powerful in need of remembering. And that remembering doesn't require a miracle. It requires a pause, a shift in gaze, a willingness to accept that maybe, just maybe, what you've been seeking has been seeking you too. There's a reason why the more you seek externally, the more restless you feel. Because your soul was never interested in performance. It was interested in presence. And presence cannot be bought or earned. It can only be allowed, received, practiced. You practice it by returning, again and again. Not to an ideal version of yourself, but to the version that's breathing now, the version that's made it through enough noise to want something quieter, something truer, something that doesn't come with applause but comes with clarity. That clarity tells you there's nowhere else you need to be, nothing else you must prove. The ground beneath you, however complex your circumstances, is not an accident. It's an invitation. Not to tolerate, but to transform. Not to escape, but to engage. You are the one who sanctifies your life not through ritual, but through recognition. Not by controlling everything, but by choosing how to relate to what's here. And what's here is enough to begin. This moment is not a waiting room. It is not a warm-up. It is not a prelude to the real thing. This is the real thing. And the degree to which you live like that is the degree to which life begins to reveal itself, as it truly is not chaotic, but patterned, not random, but radiant. Right where you stand is holy, not because it looks sacred, but because you are standing in it with awareness, with choice, with the authority to decide that your presence matters, that your attention creates, and that your life exactly as it is not an error, but a doorway. You are not behind. You are not late. You are not missing some crucial piece. You are here, and here is the only place where grace can meet you, the only place where clarity can arrive, the only place where love can be known not as a concept, but as a living current. There is nothing more to chase. You have arrived, not at the end, but at the threshold. And from this threshold, you can begin again, this time not as a seeker, but as someone who sees. And now, a closing breath. Let it be enough. Let this moment, in all its simplicity, be enough. No effort to fix, no need to rush, just the quiet realization that you are already inside the very life you were meant to touch. What happens next doesn't need to be decided now. You've done enough seeking for one day. You've said enough, thought enough. Now let it land. Let the words settle not just in your mind, but in your breath, your bones, your cells. You are not a project. You are a presence. You are not meant to be optimized. You are meant to be witnessed from within. The path will continue. The grind will return. The world will ask things of you. But this knowing this place inside that has remembered it will stay. Quiet, steady, ready to reawaken each time you pause long enough to listen. Return to it often, not for answers but for alignment. For the peace of knowing that you are not becoming sacred, you always were. You simply forgot. Right where you stand is enough. Right where you stand is the center. Right where you stand is holy. Close your eyes, if you haven't already. Let this be your exhale. Let this be your rest. You are here. You are whole. And you are home.